Welcome back to another episode of the Find and Follow podcast, where we are all about helping you find and follow Jesus in your everyday life. I'm Scott Langhand, your host, joined by the co-hosts Craig and Kyle, who are stunned because I did a different intro.
New intro?
They didn't even know.
Was it obvious on our faces?
Yeah, you guys
we
were
did not see that coming.
in shocked. It wasn't
I like it.
It wasn't revolutionary.
Well, I like it.
It was just
I listened back to the
what
podcast
it
last
is.
week, and
Way to mix it up, Scott.
Oh,
it.
man.
Keep
We're
it
getting
interesting.
crazy around here on the podcast land.
I think we should stick with it. I like the new one better.
Great. Nobody was taking a vote, but I appreciate
Okay.
you.
Well, you know me. You
expressing.
don't have to ask for my opinion. I'll give it.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is great. But then sometimes when I ask for your opinion, you don't give
That's
it.
true,
You're
too.
like, indecisive and
I
don't
get
know
to,
and not
I
sure.
get to choose when I give my opinion.
You are an adult. Way to
Yep.
go.
That's why they call it my opinion.
My opinion, my choice.
It's I choose.
My opinion, my choice.
So anyways, you listened back on the podcast last week. We had our guest friend on, Paul MacArthur.
Yeah,
and
we got to go out to lunch with him afterwards, so it was
Oh.
cool. I was still
Cinco
here
de
in the building
Mayo.
working on some other stuff, but got to meet him but then listen back to the podcast and hear a little bit more of his story, and it's fun.
Yeah, he's
As
good.
a listener, I enjoyed last week.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I got a lot of good feedback from people this last week. Like several people had sent a text message that it was their favorite episode ever.
Whoa!
Yeah.
What?
One person was just really connecting with Paul's story, similar to their story, and how it was helping them kind of process and what they could do with just listening and hearing Jesus and helping to work through their own story as they were connecting with Paul's story. You know, it's good, right? That's why we're doing a podcast, is helping people follow Jesus. And so thank you for tuning in and listening along, and we're glad that it's helpful, and we appreciate the feedback. You know, we know people are out there listening, and it's changing. God's using this to change your life, but sometimes we're just three dudes sitting in the square, not sure what's going on, and working through technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
pushing
and
buttons and
being-
recording things and producing stuff, going.
showing up on time and being tired or whatever. But I'm always looking forward to it every week, energetic, ready to go, excited to share and talk.
Was there a bonus episode last week too?
Hey, good call, Kyle. Yeah, there's a bonus episode. So
Not yet.
it's in rough draft version.
Okay.
So I've recorded it. I didn't lie. I did record it before the podcast last week. I produced it, put a little music to it, cut out a few of the ums, because it was just me, and it took me about 6 tries to get it started. And then it's only 8 minutes, and I listened back to it, and I thought, that could be better. And then I had my wife listen to it, and she said, that definitely could be better. Part of it is just, it's new, so once I got into like what I wanted to say, it was clear. But getting there, we know as speakers, sometimes getting there, you just had to take 17 routes when one would do. And I used too many words. I repeated myself.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Never do that.
I used few analogies when like one would work, and she's like, just get into it. And once I got into it, she was like, oh, that was good. And so I don't know. I felt the pressure of not releasing it because it's brand new. And I didn't want it to
'Cause
be.
It's got to be perfect.
No, I just didn't want it to be like a C minus on the grade level. And so I have, it's in the works.
Okay.
There is a bonus episode.
I just didn't know if I missed out on it.
No,
so.
you're a subscriber, right?
I am.
So it'll just show up in your feed.
It'll give me a notification even.
So I'm balancing that tension, right? We could talk about this. Maybe this would be helpful, of just getting something out there, but also for it to be helpful and to be good.
So you didn't want to put out a C minus if it was just you, but you put out a C minus on this podcast regularly.
When
right?
we screw up all the time.
I know. This is a little harder to redo 45 or 55 minutes, and the three of us.
So it just is what it is, right?
Yeah, a few episodes ago when we had
The bad audio.
horrible
Yeah.
audio, I had
By the
several people
way-
like, why didn't you just re-record it?
By the way, just to double check, so we are recording right now the
I
correct
think so.
audio?
Do you want me to get up and leave and go look?
No.
No, we're
just-
good.
just
I
asking.
trust you, Scott. I'm putting trust in the guy.
I trust myself too, but I do make mistakes.
And technology can make mistakes too.
Still looking for a audio engineer, production person. If you want to learn like skills and abilities that, man, shoot, every kid now needs to know going forward in life, in high school and college. Like there's tech just is part of life, and so recording things, producing things, putting them out there. So I thought I could get a bonus episode out before we showed back up here today, and I didn't.
You had a lofty goal. I appreciate that, right? You shoot for the moon, you land among the stars.
Yep. So
Sorry, I tried.
Thanks.
I tried to
Thanks.
do it the more you know.
That's a Sharkyism
kitschy,
right
yeah.
there.
Oh my gosh.
Hallmark.
You almost pulled it
Like,
off.
Yeah, I can't.
You
I
almost
wouldn't have
believed
laughed
it.
except I saw your face.
I'm not that
after you said
guy.
it.
Sometimes I try to slip into that. That's just not me. So I tried to do it with a straight face, but didn't work.
You were like, oh, that's cheesy.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So, yes, the bonus episode is coming out. I am in rough draft. I just need to retweak it. Plus, I recorded it first thing in the morning, and I wasn't quite awake. So it sounded pretty sleepy. You know, so
Welcome to the Find
Hey,
and Follow podcast.
it's a bonus episode.
Yeah. Like me every week on this. You say
Yes.
early for you is like 5:30. It's like
Yeah.
9:30. I'm still like,
So I wasn't warmed up. I hadn't done my, speaking red leather, yellow leather, unique New York,
yeah,
just
you're
to get
in
that.
the mirror. You didn't get, yeah.
So, anyways, I just didn't feel good about putting it out there, and it's just me, and so I was like, I'll re-record it. You know what's a little nice trick here? Maybe people don't know this would be helpful. I have no idea if this is helpful. But on Google, they have Google Docs, right? So if you've ever used those Google Sheets, it's like the Word equivalent. They have a voice type on the Google Doc. Super handy. So if you're at your laptop or even on your phone, I think you can just click voice type and you can talk. So I had it recorded and I wanted to just rework the script, and it's by yourself. It's a little easier if I was just to maybe read it. So I was like, I'll just hold my phone with the recording up to my computer.
Did it work?
It worked perfectly. Now it puts it in one big paragraph. It thought I swore in there somewhere, so it made F asterisk asterisk asterisk
Whoa,
asterisk.
Scott, what kind of podcast is this
No
now?
wonder
Right?
you didn't put it out
I
yet.
had to put had the explicit lyrics on
I
there.
got a little loose with the tongue there.
Welcome to the
Oh,
Find and
man.
Follow explicit
Oh,
bonus
that's
episode.
hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know if you were aware, Mom would always look on like CDs we would purchase back in the 90s when you had to buy music that was a CD, and on the jacket, if it had the
yeah.
explicit lyric,
Parental advisory.
parental
that
advisory,
must
little
have
black
been your
and
mother.
white. You never?
Oh yeah.
I don't
There was a
remember doing
season
that.
we weren't allowed, and then we got allowed. I vividly remember this. We were like, my parents said okay. They were a little iffy, and then they let us when we were getting a little older. And I don't remember what it was. My brother swore like at my parents or something, or said a bad word, and my mom goes, "Okay, that's it. All the parental advisory CDs gone."
Out.
So my dad rounded them up and took them, and then like weeks later, I challenged my dad to a game of ping pong. I said, "Dad, if I beat you, you have to give us our parental advisory CDs back." And I beat him, and we got our CDs back.
Goodness.
And you love to tell
I
that
vividly
story.
remember it because
Oh,
my dad
nice.
my dad could beat me at everything growing up. Like my dad is a big dude, and he has just always, even in like high school when we were like varsity tennis players, he could still whoop me around the tennis court. And I'm like, how are you doing this? Everything, basketball, soccer.
He still beats you almost every week at golf.
I destroyed him last week, by the way.
I didn't.
You were
wasn't
there.
talking about
so,
last week. I'm just saying a lot of
And
weeks.
2 weeks before that, I beat him too. So,
Okay.
Yeah. You know.
But like by beating him, usually
Yeah, but
it's like
yeah,
a stroke.
Oh,
or
for
two.
sure. It's super close. But it took me until I've been golfing for a long time, and I'm in my 30s, and he's now in his 60s, and I just started to be able to beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One day maybe I'll beat Mike. Anyways, what'd you take away from last week's episode as a listener? Because I got a lot out of it. I heard back from several people, and lots of people enjoying Paul's story and just and so I was asking a few of those, like, well, what made it really good for you? So for you, Kyle, you're a listener.
Yeah, I just first of all, as a pastor, I related to Paul's story so much, and I'm sure you guys do. Whatever avenue it is, the golf course, playing with a random person. Anytime somebody asks me what I do, if you say pastor, it automatically invokes some feelings or thoughts or attitudes. And again, on the golf course, I think the thing I get all the time is, it's like third or fourth hole is normally when they ask you
Right.
when things are we're getting
And then-
into it.
And then after that, it's pardon my French.
Yep.
Pardon
no,
my French.
Literally, it's the funniest thing. It's almost every time. What do you do? I'm a pastor. It's either, oh, that's really cool, or awesome, man. That. I think when I played in Arizona, the guy said, "Well, good Lord," is what he said to me.
That was his take.
Yep, like, good Lord. I was
and
like,
he
okay.
said, "Yep, he's good."
He is good. But almost, more often than not, the joke or the comment is, "Oh, I'm sorry what I said when I missed that putt on the first hole."
Yep.
Right? Like, oh, ha, ha, or like, "Oops, I shouldn't have said that around you." And it's like, and same thing with Paul. At restaurants and bars, at a brewery or something like that. It's like, I get that, and so I just related to that, and I try to take that posture of I didn't grow up in the church, and I want to take Jesus outside the walls of the church and into everyday life. And when I meet people, and in those, I love the fact that like we are normal people as Christ followers, and I'm not better as a pastor. I'm not higher up than anybody, but for people to go, man, we are normal people, and the love of Jesus is bigger than a building, or a program, or a thing, or a day of the week. And for more people to understand, man, I can love Jesus on the golf course, in a bar, at my workplace, is just so empowering, I think, and freeing. And the conversations it brings up for me, I literally have done that. Been working on my message at a random weird spot. Like, well, what are you doing? Oh, I'm typing my message for a. Why are you doing that here? Why? It's weird. Mm-hmm. Even the coffee shop. I love that. So I resonated with that, and really, I feel some of that call for like Paul. I'm going to be that guy at a random brewery, like working on my message, and people are like, "That's a little weird." Like, I'm going to be at a coffee shop and. People are like, you're typing a message because you're a pastor. What's that about? And so that's super, I related to that really, really strongly.
Mm-hmm.
Paul makes that point actually in Galatians.
No, which Paul?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We've got two Pauls. No, Paul the Apostle in Galatians.
The Apostle. We've been diving into Galatians.
So he kind of touches on this a little bit. He said when he went up to Jerusalem, he met with Peter and the others, and then he makes this little side comment, this little editorial comment. He said, and oh, by the way, the fact that they had a reputation as being great leaders meant nothing to me because God has no favorites. And I actually listened to it again this morning on my way here, the audio as I'm driving, and it stuck out to me again. Is the playing field is level. It's Jesus, and then it's everybody else.
Yeah.
And there aren't, more spiritual, special, elevated people, even though in the world of our culture and church, pastors or priests or whatever are considered to be somehow on a different plane. And the fact is we're not and never have been. And I just love that about Galatians. I love that about Paul's story. Paul, our guest last week, and I love that about Paul's story in the scripture. Yep.
Man, got it. Paul 1, Paul 2. Yeah. Maybe we
Paul
should.
2, Paul
Big
3.
Paul.
Big Paul.
I mean, I feel like if
Paul the Apostle.
I'm assuming Paul the Apostle is shorter than Paul MacArthur, our guest.
Probably
because most people are. I mean, he's a big dude.
Yeah.
So you have like a big friend that's Big Paul. Oh, that's Little Paul. So we go that.
We go Big Paul, Little Paul.
So somewhere in one of his letters, Paul references the fact that he's kind of unimpressive physically in person.
He's probably Little Paul.
Yep, probably little.
Big Paul, Little Paul.
Big Paul. Yeah, one of the things that I thought was, for me, helpful was just hearing Paul. It's like, oh, yeah, everyday life, like Kyle, what you're saying, but everyday life, wherever we're going, we're just sharing Jesus because we're the church. The people. We're the representation of Christ. His Spirit is in us, so wherever we go, therefore Jesus is going, and He's there and able to use us and minister to people. And it's catches people off guard sometimes, depending on the context. Sometimes when you show up in a building for the purpose of gathering to worship God, to learn about God, to encourage one another, more people are in tune, obviously, with doing that. And you show up at a restaurant or park or picking up your kid at a school line or wherever you go, people aren't maybe ready for that. But man, God is there. He can use you. He can do amazing things, and you just never know what has been going on in the other person's heart and life, and how they're ready for God to do something in their heart, and God is using you. And sometimes we don't get tuned into that last minute.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh my goodness, God was doing that through me and in me and ministering to that person. And like, yeah, He's been working on their heart and their life, and they've been looking for, maybe even praying about an answer or something for God to show Himself to be real or to provide for them in a certain way. And then boom, there you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're being used. That was one of my favorite parts, is just because I've had so many of those experiences where it's like, oh man, I feel like I should talk to this server, this person who's giving me coffee, whatever it is. Like, they're going to ask. I know they're going to ask. This guy on the first hole is going to ask. And there's times where it's like, oh, it's an annoyance a little bit, or like, but I've felt that where it's like, I need to talk to this person about Jesus. I need to invite them to my church. I need to, whatever it is. And I love those stories from as little as it is with Fusion students going, hey, you need to come to our youth group because it's so much fun. And we also get to have authentic community and talk about real life and how Jesus can help us, to where we've seen it a lot in this season. Scott, we've met, good friends that are part of our church and our community now. It's like, They just started coming because someone was like, yeah, hey, our church is meeting and is open and is loving people. You should come along. And Jesus is doing something, and you should be a part of it. And I love that. And like you say, I didn't really overthink it or think much about it, but there's been like legit times where I'm like overwhelmed by emotion because I'm like, okay, Jesus, you're asking me to talk to this person. Like, there's something here. And I really felt that with Paul's story, just going like, I'm just going to position myself in a place to love people in a place where they don't feel loved or deserving or like Jesus is a part of their life or would ever want to be a part of their life. And I love that. And I think we need to do more of that wherever it is. It doesn't have to be in a bar or something like that, but wherever we find ourselves and position ourselves, you and your wife Amy in your business, like, hey, we're gonna love Jesus through the way we do business, and people are gonna notice it, and it's a door to we are honorable and manage this business well because we love Jesus, and that opens people to you're pastor on the side or whatever that is, right? And I just love that, and I think too often we separate and compartmentalize our religious, quote unquote, religious life or church life or Christianity to a subset of a day a week or a building we go to or a program. And I think the more we look at Paul, little Paul's words in Galatians, it's this lifestyle of understanding.
Little
Paul, the OG, the original Paul.
The original
I don't
Paul.
know.
Paul number one. We understand this lifestyle of understanding living into grace and how that affects every aspect of our life.
I agree with what you're both saying, and I think it's important.
Well, I wish you would kind of disagree.
Okay.
How's that?
I disagree
what do you disagree
with everything
with?
you just
Everything
said.
we said. It would just make it lively.
No, I was going to say, but I think there's a flip side to the coin as well, and that is that sometimes I think we don't realize how much the Lord's using us even when we're not aware of it. And, so I think we should be more aware. I think we should be more tuned in. All the stuff you guys were saying, that's certainly one side of the coin that's probably the most underdeveloped in our lives and something we should really be intentional about. But even when you don't think God's using you, He's using you. And one of my favorite stories is a conference that I was at in Bend, Oregon, and I was sitting next to a guy I didn't know, and we were waiting for the worship to start, and so I just introduced myself, and he said, interestingly enough, he said, you probably don't recognize me. And I said, no, do I know you? And he said, well, not really. But he said, when you were planting a church in Bellingham, Washington, I was working at a rental place. It rented equipment for, landscaping and other kinds of projects and stuff. And so he said, you would come in regularly and rent ditchers or skidsters or, equipment from me. And you would just occasionally just talk to me about the Lord and how important He was in your life. And he said, it just had such an impact on me that later on I gave my heart to Christ and ended up answering a call to be in full-time ministry, and that's why I'm here at this conference. And I thought, wow, I wasn't even aware that I don't even remember saying anything to anybody.
Right.
I was working a job.
You didn't roll in there on purpose to be like, I'm preaching to this guy.
No,
I got to get a trencher today and get to the job.
Because I got some sprinkler lines to put in. I mean, I'm on the job, right? But I'm not also at all embarrassed, and so I spoke up about the Lord. And anyway, unbeknownst to me, the Lord was using me, and I was just trying to get the job done because it was how I fed the family and trying to get a church off the ground and all that. And here God was using me with a guy behind the counter that I only had, maybe 5-10 minutes interaction with on occasion when I'd pick up a piece of equipment. So I don't know, it was just very encouraging to me, and it was a great reminder. Hey, you know what? Even when you don't think God's using you and you're not making a difference, you might be making a bigger difference than you know.
You definitely are, because Jesus is attractive. Right, Kyle?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely attractive. So our interactions with people, how we treat people with kindness, with respect, how we honor one another is different than people without Jesus in them, and definitely is attractive to people. And when you're like doing a business transaction, so the way in which we are conducting our business is representative of Christ. And so therefore it's people who are paying attention, because that guy had interactions with dozens of people every day, and you might be a difference maker in the way you interact. I answer people a lot of times when they ask me, like, well, what do you do? Now, in the last few years, I'll say something like, usually I'll say, I help people find and follow Jesus. And then they kind of look at you like, well, that's different, and then I'll put it together. I'm like, I'm on a church team, mission church. But it's because when you say a pastor, you get the weirdest. If you're not a pastor and you've never had to say like, "Oh, I'm a pastor," you get the weirdest looks. You get blank stares. You get, "I have no idea how to respond to you." You get, "Good Lord," or
You
what
get
did that guy
really
say?
or uncomfortable. People start getting uncomfortable. Like,
uncomfortable.
oh, weird.
People just feel condemnation instantly, and so
I had a guy give me a hug after a golf round, though. After I told him I was a pastor, it was like the opposite. He's like, "Man, this was so great." Give me like total strangers. Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we're hugging. You okay?
it's pretty
Which
polarizing.
was
You kind
awkward
of
in a whole different kind
Yeah,
of way.
I was like, okay, what? Yeah, different, uncomfortable.
strangers hugging it out.
He was a nice guy. He was a hugger.
Yeah. We didn't take the hat off.
Yeah,
and
it
do the
wasn't like a handshake on the 18th green. So good, man. Okay.
Just long
okay.
embrace, awkwardly long. But I had a like same interaction where was getting allergy shots for seasonal grass allergies and you're going in multiple times a week, and it's like every week, and so I'd have the same nurse a lot and getting a shot, and then you have to hang out for a few minutes and chatting. And summertime would wear like shorts and flip flops, and so finally she was like, "What do you do for work?" You could tell she'd been trying to
You're
piece
so
it together.
casual, and
Yeah,
you're here in the middle of the day.
Like highly relational, popping in there for 15 minutes, like on a Thursday at 1:15, right? Take a lunch break, head over there, get an allergy shot. And it's one of those, like, I am trying to put it together. Like, do you work in business? Are you a contractor? Like, it just isn't making sense. And so, but it opened doors to have conversation about her life. And again, multiple times seeing them, and who knows, right? Like Craig, what you're saying, the interactions.
You don't know.
But having the zeal for Jesus, if we could try to segue maybe to Galatians here a little bit more, to the OG Paul, and how God was using him it's the clarity of here's what life's about: love God, love people, in the power of the Holy Spirit. That's it. That's the clarity of the mission of all of us, what we're designed to do. And I love that. I don't know, you guys help me out with this. On verse 14 of chapter 1, Paul just talks, he was advancing in Judaism beyond many Jews of my own age and was extremely zealous for the traditions of my fathers. Like, Paul had this zeal for God and the traditions of Judaism, right? But then when he meets Jesus, he has that same sort of zeal for Jesus and advancing the gospel to the Gentiles now and taking it to people that hadn't heard this good news. And he's obviously writing this letter to combat these people who are trying to squash the freedom that we have in Christ. But I love that he has that zeal. And I love having some fire for my day, wake up excited for the day. I love, having some zealousness. I don't say that usually. I don't be like, I got zeal today.
So zealous today. Let's go.
But I'm encouraged by Paul's zeal, like, for God, even though he's misdirected for a chunk of his life. Like, having that energy and that excitement. I think that's one of the things that makes a difference when we have everyday interactions with people. It's like, why do you have joy? Why do you have peace in the midst of a pandemic? Why do you have hope for the future when situation's not bright and cheery? So there's a zeal for God. There's a passion for God that is evident to people around us, whether we're super aware of it or not. It's just, I want to live with that zealousness.
Yeah, and I think the more we dive into Paul and his life and his character, and if we were to do personality tests and all that kind of stuff, he's this diligent guy, and I think that's what makes him like this perfect candidate for what he does in the early church. Is just this. We've been talking a lot as an organization around these ideas of humble, hungry, and healthy, and hunger is never a doubt with this dude, right? It's never like, Paul's just lazy, he's slacking.
Yeah.
I mean, dude is hungry, and he applied that in some really negative ways in the early part of his life and in some negative pursuits. But even in Judaism, in this, like, I'm going to be the best. I have a hunger to learn more, to know more, to be better.
Take on more responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, he always couches it. Yeah, my job, he says this in chapter 2 somewhere. He's like, my job is to get the message to the Gentiles. Like, there was other people involved. He has Titus, Barnabas. But he felt the responsibility for everybody on the planet besides the Hebrews, besides the nation of Israel, which is like the majority of the world. You're like, what's your job? I got to get to the whole world this good news message. Like, there's a hunger there.
Just this diligence and then this zeal that's just like, and I love that. And like you said, Scott, verse 14.
Do you want me to sing the song? Zeal for you.
That's it there.
Oh,
And then he goes on
apparently
to say,
you
like,
didn't want to sing the
no,
song.
I'm not going to sing the song. I sang a couple weeks ago, and you Yeah. Anyway, then he that redirects that into this proclamation of who Jesus is, and I just think that character and that thing that's innate in him, and a thing that can be learned. That we've been talking a lot about this, and oftentimes we're really good at it in some areas of our life, but as we can
What's that?
the hunger and that zeal
Uh-huh.
for whatever it is, financial pursuit or
Right.
triathlon or training or whatever. And I think Paul had that. We see it specifically in his pursuit of religiousness, but I'm sure he had that in his business as he made tents and stuff like that, right? Like to make money. But he talks about that, and he talks about that pivot in the verse 14 and 15. But then God redirected that for the most useful purpose, which is to let all these people know about Jesus.
All these
and
people.
now I'm proclaiming this because of this zeal and this character trait and this, thing within inside me. I'm using that and maximizing that for the kingdom of God in really cool ways.
Yeah. Yeah, Amy and I have that all the time with our business, where people come in, help people have furniture and cabinets they love by repainting them. And so we're in people's homes a lot. We have design consults. We get to know people, in their homes. And they'll ask us all the time, so do you guys do this full time? Because we're talking about scheduling and that kind of thing. And like, no. And so then like, well, what do you do? And Amy, part-time mom, and full-time mom, right? And part-time work. And like, what do I do? But it just opens up these conversations each and every week of like, hey, we're passionate about helping you have like a space in your home that you love, and refresh it, but then also passionate about helping people find and follow Jesus. And so it opens up a lot of conversations.
Yeah. And I love that he even goes on in verse, so that's verse 14 kind of through 16, the tail end of 16. When this happened, I did not rush out to consult with any human being. And we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago, where he's really going to the point where like I didn't have to consult with all these other Jewish people and Peter and this kind of hierarchy. You thought like Jesus met me and I knew my vision was clear and I went and did it. But I resonate with that so much. Like when I tell my story, I tell people as a middle school student in high school, the phrase I always use is I hit the ground running. Like I met Jesus and I was like, this is my life. This is going to define me. And there was a zeal and a passion where I immediately I was like, what do I need to do in church? I'm going to serve. Like I'm going to start reading my Bible. I'm going to start knowing more. I had friends that they grew up in it, and it was like kind of this thing that they felt obligated to do, or
the ho hum,
the
doldrums.
And by it, you really mean church,
not whole
Jesus.
Yeah, the church thing, but the Jesus thing, right? Like it was like this thing that was like a part of their lives because their parents wanted them to, and like we're supposed to read our Bible or memorize Bible verses or whatever. And I just remember having this intense, like it was foreign to me as I looked around and saw other people who had been in it, and I had friends that were there with me. Don't get me wrong, but I hit the ground running, and I was like 0 to 60. I was like, I'm doing this thing, and almost to the point where it's like I knew immediately like this is what I'm giving my life to, and I relate to that with Paul. Paul's like, I didn't go backwards. I didn't go talk to these people or go talk to my old boss and be like, hey, I'm done with this. He's like, I went immediately and started doing what Jesus told me to do.
Kyle, I relate to what you're saying because I'm the same way. When I gave my heart to Christ, it was 110%. Like, I'm all in. Like, let's do this. And I knew then, I was only 19, but I knew that it was going to define my life. It was going to define me for the rest of eternity. And I was totally in. But I think part of the reason that was your experience and mine is that we didn't grow up in churched homes. And I think, sometimes when you're raised in church, the risk there, it doesn't have to happen, it doesn't have to be true, but in many cases it is true that Jesus doesn't stand out as the point as much as it's church or faith or some kind of sort of generic. It involves Jesus. Jesus' name is in there, but it's more about this is the religious part of our life, or this is our faith, or this is what we do because we're church people. And that's not near as compelling and inviting. Jesus is. Yep. And so I didn't grow up with church life. It's like, for me, it wasn't about church. It wasn't about faith. It was about Jesus. Yep. I met a person, and he, I found, was irresistible and compelling and life-changing, and I wanted to know him better and follow him. And even in the early years, like, it wasn't about church for me. I did start going to church, but it's like, that really wasn't the point ever.
Yep.
Yeah, it's about actually knowing Christ and being changed by him.
Right.
And we could say, oh, yeah, it's the upbringing, it's the 15, 20 years ago, but what is it today? Like every day you got to choose to have zeal for God have hunger for the things of God, of Him, and
Right.
to pursue Him and to make Him known in the world and help people to hear the good news of Jesus. So it's an ongoing, because you can't just look back, 50 years ago, Craig, right? That's kind of crazy.
It'll be 50 years this
50 years.
September.
50 years. Anyways, but just to go, oh, I'm going to bank on that experience,
Yep.
good or bad. Like, oh, I don't get to know Christ because I didn't grow up in a Christian home. It's what are we doing with it now? I'm continually choosing
Yep.
to have
50
hunger for
years of
God and
choosing.
go after Him. I love, too, Paul, he's having to say that because he's getting just blasted.
Yeah, he's getting some flack.
He's getting targeted. He's trying to get canceled. His authority is being questioned.
Yep.
The people, and so he's having to really make it clear. So it sounds like it's braggadocious, and again, he's going maybe too far. But he's going, hey, I didn't get this from some dude. I didn't get it from you Gentiles or your local, team. I didn't go to Jerusalem. I didn't talk to Peter. I got it straight from Jesus. I had a divine revelation that's unique. And so that's my authority is I'm standing on what God said, and that's the revelation. Therefore, that's the good news. You can take that to
And
the
basically,
bank.
he's saying to his critics, you want to take me on, you're taking Jesus on.
Right,
Because he's the one who commissioned me.
Yeah, that's the good news. But then to start chapter 2, to kind of counterbalance that, 14 years later, he went up to Jerusalem with Barnabas. He took Titus, right? So teamwork again. Sometimes I think we over-highlight Paul, overemphasize. Like, it's just Paul. Like, he always had a team with him.
Always had an entourage.
Several of the letters are like, Paul and Timothy are writing this to you, but only Paul gets the credit.
Yeah.
Like, anyways, so he goes up and he's got this humility. So he presents his message to Peter, to the other apostles who are with Jesus in person and walked, the earth with him, right? And I went in response to a revelation, which I'm not sure what that means, but we could talk about that, and set before them the gospel that I preach among the Gentiles. But I did this privately to those who seemed to be the leaders for fear that I was running or had run my race in vain.
Yeah, I like the way the NLT puts it there, Scott. I wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement for fear that my efforts had been wasted and I was running the race for nothing. Because, again, we referenced this week 1, right? Like, I talked about this tension, and a lot of it was, like, racial tension and, cultural tension between Jewish people and the original people in Jerusalem. And this is where it started, and this is God's revelation to us. And so I think Paul's realizing this is a revelation from God, something I'm supposed to do, but I don't want it to be a thing that's divisive and disunified and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's like, we're going to go deal with this.
Yeah, but I just see him like open-handedly presents like, hey, here's the message I'm presenting. Here's how I'm presenting Christ. What do you guys think? And he's asking for some feedback. But he's 100% confident in his message, right? He just wants to double check, and he's open to input. He's open to receive feedback. He's asking for it.
And he's doing it because the Lord told him to. That's
that special revelation thing that he had. But
he's also, I love the way he does this. He's using it kind of twofold because he's using it to show that, but he's also using it in verse 3. And they supported me. So, like, this is a God thing. This is a thing for the Gentiles, but it's also got the Jewish leaders' stamp of approval.
Yeah.
The guys that you're like, well, but it started in the official guys in the first, Peter and those people, like, well, you're this kind of offshoot, and I don't know, man. The Judaizers specifically. He's verse 3. He's like, they supported me, and they didn't demand all the things that you're saying that they should demand. So he's adding value from Jesus' perspective, but again, in this cultural tension of these lies that are coming in from the Judaizers, he's also giving a little bit of balance and authority from their perspective.
Yeah, if the authority of Jesus isn't good enough, Peter says it's good too. You okay then? But I think he just humility, right? Full confidence in what he's saying, the gospel, but he's still going, okay, let's check it, let's test it, let's find out if it is true. Okay, it is true. You're saying the same thing. That's the reality. In like the team values that we've been rolling around at Mission Church, humble, hungry, and healthy. And if you're curious about that, you can go to mc.life/team. But just having this humility. So it's not shying away from who you are. It's fully stepping into who you are, but it's not about you in the spotlight, about making a name for yourself. And Paul's only having to really defend himself so that the gospel can be preached. Because just like today, there's a perversion of the good news. There's tons
multiple
of
perversions.
Yeah, there's tons of lies out there, and some of them sound really clever, like really like almost like the truth, but they're a lie. It's a scheme. It's a ploy of the devil and of the enemy. And so it is good to go, hey, like he does in verse 10 of chapter 1. He says, am I trying to win the approval of people? Am I trying to get your guys' approval? Like, good message, Paul. Great job today, Craig. Way to preach a good one today. I'm really happy with the way you said that. So, like, he's going, I'm not trying to mix the message here just to make you guys happy. He's not trying to please men. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to please Jesus. And I understand that. You guys chime in here on this. I understand that is he's just talking about the message content, not serving people, not helping people, not trying to like make them happy in the sense of like coming along and supporting them. He's just saying, I'm not making a different gospel here just so you guys are happy. I'm not going in with the circumcision thing, the thing that you guys are saying that people need to become Jews first in order to get to Christianity, Jews, and then to get to Christ. You don't have to follow all the laws to get there. He's just saying, if I was doing that, come on now, I wouldn't be serving Christ. I would be serving you guys, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that's the context of what he's talking about, right? That whole first setup is addressing the problem, which I think we hit really well, a couple weeks ago. Here's why he's writing this. And so he's like, he goes as far as verse 8, let God's curse fall on anyone, including me or an angel from heaven who preaches a different kind of good news, right? And he's talking about this legalism, but he's also referencing this idea of watering it down to make it more simple or easy or understandable. And he goes, that's not what I'm about. I'm not going to change my message over here to please you. I'm not going to make it sound better because you want, for the Jewish people, you want it to sound more Jewish. He's like, the good news is the good news. I'm going to preach what I know is the revelation of Jesus Christ, and I'm pleasing him. And again, I'm clear about, back to the humble part, I'm clear about who I am and what I've been called to do, and I'm clear about the message, so I'm going to do that because that's what God's called me to do, and I'm glorifying him in everything that I do. And whether I make you mad or upset you or frustrate you, in a way that, again, he's loving and he's caring and he's not being a jerk about it and he's not just like, well, screw you, this is the truth. But he's like, man, my goal is to glorify God, and I'm trying to do that the way I love you, but I'm not gonna change my message and water it down to make you happy.
But Paul also changed his approach.
Absolutely.
Was it Acts 17 where he's talking about to the Greeks and he noticed they had all these different gods, and then there's the one that's the unknown God. And he's like, hey, you got this statue and you're worshiping to this unknown God. Guess what? I know him. Let me tell you about him. And so he was always adapting his approach. Whatever he needed to do, he became all things to all people so that he might win some.
I was just thinking of that passage in Corinthians. He said, to the Greeks, I became like a Greek person. To the Jews, like a Jew. Yeah, whatever he needed to do to adapt to his audience, to the people he's trying to reach and help them find and follow Jesus, he'd make those adjustments, but short of anything that would compromise the message or his character.
Yep.
Yeah,
we say it this way.
Balance.
We say it this way a lot. We marry the mission and we date the model, right? The mission is set, and his mission and his message from Jesus is set. He's not wavering on that. But the model is going to change a little bit, and it works a little bit better to tweak the way of doing that to this people group and that people group, or the way that we get that done. He's not gonna compromise or cross these bounds of the mission that he knows is literally sent from God. Like, he had this amazing encounter. But yeah, there's some movement there in the model and the trajectory of how that's done in some pretty cool ways that he does in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's like, okay, the good news is the good news, but are you at a bar trying to talk to someone and tell them about Jesus? You got to probably have a different approach than if you were at a Sunday morning gathering. If you stand in the yard with your neighbor, how do you talk to them and share the good news with them? You're at a family function and you're talking with an extended family member, and they kind of know Jesus, but they've drifted from their faith, and it's more
overseas
religious.
In a completely different culture or geopolitical environment.
Yeah, right. That one kind of almost becomes a little more obvious, where you're like, I don't even speak their language, or I don't even know their culture. They live totally different, so we're a little more aware. But even in our everyday circumstances, like your coworker and what's their experience and background and the context in which you work, there's just different ways, different approaches that you can get into talking about sharing the good news.
Right.
And I just think, man, be creative with that. Like, who has God put you in your path today? Don't be afraid to just be creative. Jesus did that all the time. They were walking along and say, hey, you guys see this tree? You know? It'd be like you're at work and you're like, hey, see this stapler? And you're like, what? That would be weird. But that's what Jesus did.
See the stapler? Jesus holds your life together.
Oh, come on. I didn't even know where to go with that. See?
Nailed it.
Oh, you're welcome. That was great right there. You feel like your life's falling apart and you need something to just bind it together? See the stapler? Jesus is the stapler of life.
It's a stretch, but
It might work,
I
though.
tried to go there with
That's
you.
a stretch.
If that works for somebody, let us know, please.
But the coworker came to Jesus because of a stapler.
But Jesus used everyday life and wherever they were at. He's like, oh, see these sheep? See these goats? I mean, he did, right? You know? It's
So
like,
if you're talking to somebody at the bowling alley, hey, you want to get your life out of the gutter?
oh, come on
Yeah,
now.
come
That's great. We should go down this trail.
Let's
Wherever.
not. We're going to lose subscribers and views. Oh, okay, these guys.
You just wander over to lane 4. Hey, I noticed you had a lot of gutter balls over here. Do you feel like that's a representative of your life?
I know somebody that can get your life
I know
out
how
of the
you can
gutter.
get it. It's like putting up those
I was
bumper
going to say,
guards.
Jesus is like the bumpers.
You want
You
your
live
life
with
to be
margin.
a perfect 300?
Oh,
You
God.
want to strike every time?
Okay, I might get up and walk out now.
You become a listener again?
Not that I'll listen to the first 40 minutes we have been at.
But anyways, that's just what, I just think sometimes we get overthinking it. And like, who has God put before you? How do you talk to them? It could be your kids. You're driving around with your kids and it's some weird conversation, but you see a opportunity there to interject about talking about Jesus, what it means to live the way of Jesus, the life of Jesus. One other thought I had on this was to like, what do we talk about? People are always looking for freedom. They're looking for grace. We are all looking for freedom. We get a little, distracted, but misdirected on it. But we're looking for freedom in life. How do we experience true freedom? We feel the obligation to do things. And so, that's what Paul is combating in this letter. He's like, these dudes are trying to squash our freedom. They're, verse 4, I think they're jealous. It says, this matter arose because some false brothers, right, the Judaizers, had infiltrated our ranks to spy on the freedom we have in Christ Jesus and to make us slaves. Like their whole goal. And so maybe they were trying to do it out of their own zeal for God and it's misdirected. Maybe they, though, were just jealous, just pure jealous. Like they're living this free life, like not doing all the rules and regulations that we have on ourselves, which we can't do. We can't, accomplish all of that. I would like to live the way they're living, but I don't feel like I could. So I'm going to just try to squash what they got going on because they seem really free and joyful in Christ. And it just doesn't seem right. And so I think there's a jealousy there that a lot of times is the motivation for squashing other people's freedom.
I think for sure that's part of human nature is if somebody else is succeeding more or enjoying more or freer or whatever it is, we do become jealous sometimes. And if we're honest with ourselves, sometimes our motivations are just what you're talking about, Scott, to play down what they're experiencing so we don't feel so bad about ourselves because we're not experiencing it, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think in this case, the saying is, misery loves company.
Yep.
They're like, wait,
Does it, though? I know
Yes.
it's a saying, but
I think
if I'm miserable, I want to get out of there.
yeah, but I think that in this
But they don't
context,
feel like they can.
yeah,
So they want to make these other people feel miserable with them since they can't
the
get out
rules
of
and
it.
your version of Christianity is more freeing and less legalistic, and I totally think that they were going like, well, we're over here and they made us do X, Y, and Z. It's not fair that you're not having to do all those things. You need to come with us because as I look to you and I see that, like, that jealousy, I think, is that, like, no, you have to come be miserable with us because it's not fair that we're miserable and you're not, and you got to get over here. You don't see that?
No, I do. I don't know. Personally, I'm like, if I find myself in a fairway bunker, let's say we're golfing, I don't think, oh, Kyle should be in here with me and, Kenny should be in here with me. I'm thinking, how the heck do I get out of here and get moving forward in life?
Yeah.
But
That's
if
a
you're
little bit different, though.
Yeah, like Craig, you're saying, like, they're feeling that obligation of, like, if you're running a race and you're like, I believe that I'm supposed to wear this 10-pound weight on my leg because that's what the race director
That's the
said.
rule. That's the rule.
But that guy isn't wearing his. That's not really fair. You need to go wear your 10-pound weight because I'm getting weighed down and you're
Yeah,
not.
but I'm thinking, well, do I have to? Maybe I don't. Is there a freedom I should be experiencing that Christ has for me? Like, let me investigate that and shed that weight.
And that's what Paul's saying.
Yeah.
But there's a generational, like, indoctrinating, really, that they've dealt with. That's,
Right.
Well, in a sense of, like, that was the way for so long, and Jesus came and said, "Hey, you guys don't have to wear the weight anymore."
Right.
And so that's what Paul's point. But for so many years they've been told, no, you have to wear the weight, and God will love you if you wear the weight.
No, we should help each other with getting rid of the weights and experience the
course.
freedom and the grace that Christ
Absolutely,
has
and
for
that's
us.
Paul's whole point.
Man, if you're miserable, get unmiserable.
That's right. Get out of the bunker.
That's what I'm saying.
Hey,
Get out of the bunker.
you feel like your life's in the bunker? Let me introduce you to Jesus.
Oh man, who's writing these down? We'll have
Nobody.
We'll have a
Nobody
cheat,
is
we'll have a
writing these
cheat sheet. You can cross-reference location versus saying. You're like,
No,
golf
do
course.
not.
Okay, what do I got here?
No, people are gonna be like, "What church you go to? Who told you that? Crazy people, get out of there."
Okay, walking on trail. Okay, go reference what does Kyle say? Walking on
Hey,
trail.
before we run out of time,
You ever feel like you don't know the direction you're headed in life?
why don't you-
Yeah,
Craig,
I was
bring us
gonna.
back. Were you gonna
I was
say
gonna
something?
tee us up for next week, but did you have something
go
there?
ahead.
Well, I was just gonna. I think you hit it earlier, Craig. But as a tee up for the next section of what Paul's diving into, as he has a disagreement with Peter, even though they were in agreement, soon to not have a agreement, is we all are focusing on the outside of life, the appearances of life, really for ourselves, but mostly for other people. We're really intrigued with the way people look, where people live, what they drive, their skills and abilities that are outwardly, evident, and we get all focused in on that and create judgments around that, like value statements,
And
like
we worry
you're
about
good,
what other people
you're
think.
bad. We're very, very concerned about people's opinion of my exterior, personally, physically, my life, the way you perceive me as a father, as a husband, as a neighbor, as a friend. We're trying to manage all of those things, and the truth is, God just really zeroes in on our heart, and He's really, really concerned and cares and sees our heart more than the outside, and understands if our heart is changed, if we're genuinely changed by Jesus. It'll start to show up on the outside, and not in a fake way, but there's a zeal for God, there's a hunger for God that shows up. And so Paul's going to dive into that, and I think that's really something that we all struggle with, we all are dealing with. Most of us get up and look in the mirror before we head out for the day so we can see what we look like, so we can present ourselves. That's what I teach my kids. Did you even look? Should you comb your hair today? We're very conscious of that. And so they're going to struggle with this and have a disagreement with the Gentiles and the Jews.
I'm looking forward to that for our next time.
Yeah, I think it'll be helpful for all of us. But hopefully today was helpful for you as you tuned in, understanding the freedom we have in these 10-pound weights around our legs. That you just get rid of those suckers and run free in Christ, and what it really means just to
Do you
love
remember
God.
those old donut ones? They looked like a donut. My mom had the '80s donut.
My mom had the sandbag ones
Yeah.
with a
Oh, they
strap.
had straps. My
Yeah.
mom's were just like a donut, and you could they're stretchy. You put them around
Okay.
your hand, or your.
And you just walk them.
Sorry.
That's just helpful, instead of wearing the weighted
weight
vest. Anyways, for more workout tips, check out our other podcast that we're starting that won't be released. But no, the bonus episode is coming out this week.
All right.
I will just push it out there.
We heard you say it, right?
And-
Yeah, we'll hold him to it this time.
I know, I said it last week too. But just trying to be helpful. This whole podcast has helped you find and follow Jesus in everyday life. And so hopefully you took something along. Maybe share it with a friend, someone else. If you haven't listened to last week's story of Paul and his relationship with Christ, take a listen to that.
Big Paul.
Big Paul.
And we talk about little Paul too in there.
Yeah. And so thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following along, subscribing. Make sure you subscribe so you do get that bonus episode when it's coming out in the next few days here. But thanks for tuning in and following along. We will see you at the next episode.